wrong attempts at trying to fix envy. Everybody knows subconsciously, psychiatrists have talked about this, that envy is bad for a person, right? And so what our educational system has done, particularly in the public education system, is say, well, let's eliminate envy and jealousy amongst the kids by getting rid of competition. And so, well, let's just get rid of competition, because competition points out that one kid is better at something than another kid. And then what happens is then comparison starts, and this creates envy and jealousy and low self-esteem and all these other different kinds of things. But boy, the answer, get rid of competition, is completely ridiculous, because it actually made matters worse. It made comparison worse. It made jealousy worse. It made envy worse. Why? Because it didn't understand the nature of competition and what competition actually achieves. And you're not comparing yourself to one another, you're comparing yourself to your capacity to win the game. So what competition actually does is, on general, it brings out the best in you. Competition in and of itself is about evaluating yourself. It's not about saying, well, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, to get that other person's position, because you're not competing against, I'm going to destroy this person as my enemy, but you're using the rules of the game to try to win. And so competition has a phenomenally noble role in every person's life, particularly among young males. Welcome, everyone, to the Salty Pastor Podcast. I'm Douglas Peak, and I am your Salty Pastor. Everything we do here on this podcast is designed to coach you up in your faith. And we just believe that, fluff is not enough, that people want to know how intense and complete and academically rigorous and intellectually deep, philosophically sound, rationally argued Christianity really is. That it's all about Jesus, but he is the most rational, philosophical, historical, archaeologically proven being to ever exist, and that by following him, because he raised from the dead, your life will never be the same. But guess what? You learn who you really are, what you believe and why you believe it. You learn your point and place in this world, the meaning of life. I mean, just think about the ramifications of knowing your place and purpose in this life. Answering all those questions of not only who you are, but where are you going? Why do you struggle with certain things, like self-confidence or self-doubt, how to overcome those things? All those answers are found in Jesus Christ. So that's why the Salty Pastor Podcast exists, to help coach you in your faith in Jesus. And that means encouraging you to do the work for yourself. We are coaches. We're not doing it for you. We want you to know what you believe and why you believe it. And that right there, my friends, that right there is one of the most significant steps that you will ever take in growing in life and answering all these incredibly important questions about your life. So I've been talking about a major announcement, and that is I am now full-time committed to the Salty Pastor Podcast and what we're going to be doing in the world. It's a brand new endeavor for me, a brand new world. And the main reason for this is because I've retired from being a full-time pastor. And the main reason for that has been the fact that my lovely wife, Kim, we've been married for 36 years, we've been together 38 years, has been diagnosed about 5 years ago with a very aggressive form of MS. And she has some of the rarest symptoms that are associated with MS. And it's just, she's in the point now where she needs pretty much full-time supervision and care. And so I have retired from full-time ministry in order to do that. and also pursue coaching people through this forum. So we hope and pray that if you have a local church and you're plugged in and you're growing and you're excited about being there and you're active, you're in a small group, you're doing discipleship, you're there every Sunday, or you're listening every Sunday online, doing studies and growing in your faith, that this might help just supplement that. But for all of those of you who aren't, maybe you are unable due to your travel schedule to be involved heavily in a local church. Maybe you are in a situation where you've been disenfranchised from a church. Maybe you've had a bad church experience. Maybe you're a little like in between churches for a period. Maybe you've moved and you can't find a new church. Whatever the case is, our ultimate goal is for you to understand who you are in Christ and how you are a part of his body, the church. And so if you are in any of those situations, then I, through this forum, will be your pastor. But I also will be your salty pastor. And that is, I'm here to help you sometimes learn things or hear things that you may not want to hear, but ultimately I think they will benefit you, because in the end, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this because I need something to do. I'm doing it because I care about you, and I care about your faith, and I care about your growing faith. So that's what the Salty Pastor is all about, and I am so glad. If you would be so kind as to become a part of the Salty Pastor Network, be a part of the Salty Crew. You can go to the Salty Pastor Podcast on YouTube. That's the name. Just search Salty Pastor Podcast, and I'll pop up. If you would like and subscribe, you know, we're on our way to 500 subscribers. We want to get to over 1,000, because once you get to 1,000, the ball game really changes and the algorithm will start recommending it to other people. And right now, that's one of the most effective ways for us to grow as a ministry, as a Salty Pastor. Number two, you can go to thesaltypastor.com. That's our website. You can access all of the prior episodes. You can access some other things there. And also another ask that I have is not only that you like and subscribe or go to thesaltypastor.com, but that you become a regular supporter of this ministry. You can donate right through the website right there on the donate button, or you can text the word give to 833-562-3051. That's text the word give to 833-562-3051. My hope is that I won't have to give that pitch for much longer, that people will jump on board and be a part of it. Also, if you just like doing it the old-fashioned way and supporting it through sending a check, just send it to the Salty Pastor, and the address is 2742 East Ridgedale Place. That's 2742 East Ridgedale Place, Eagle, Idaho, 83616. Now, we're currently in a series called The 7 Deadly Emotions, and on Tuesday, we talked about the biblical examples of envy. And one of the deadly emotions is envy, and we draw this list from, we kind of talked about where it came from, Aristotle's 7 virtues. Then, we talked about Evagrius, Ponticus. Boy, I get all those names mixed up. They're all these old Latin Roman names. But Evagrius Ponticus, okay? Let me get that out right. Came up with the 7 deadly sins. And so then we kind of expanded on that about the 7 deadly emotions that are associated with these 7 deadly sins. And on on a Tuesday, we talked about the emotion of envy and how it can impact or affect your life and why it is so deadly. So, real quick overview. Envy is one of the oldest and most prolific stories in the Bible. It started with Cain and Abel. It's prevalent in the story of Rachel and Leah, Jacob's 12, his sons, and their envy of Joseph, how they beat him up and threw him in a pit and sold him to slavers, and that's how he got to Egypt. You can zoom forward. You see it in the reign of David. You see it in many Old Testament situations. You see it in New Testament too. We see it amongst the disciples. They were arguing over who would have first position in the kingdom of God. You see it in Judas Iscariot, and why he betrayed Jesus Christ. You see it happening between Paul and Peter in the book of Galatians, where he chastises Peter. And but most important, the biggest example of all that we discussed on Tuesday was this is what caused Lucifer to rise up against Yahweh. He was envious of the fact that God was God and he wasn't. So, from a biblical standpoint, envy is one of the oldest stories in the Bible. What's really interesting, too, is envy is the foundation of the 10th commandment. And that is, you shall not covet. Another way to translate, you should not be envious of any other person's things or position in life. And so I think that's really important to understand that envy is a main theme throughout scriptures. We also talked about where it comes from, and that it comes out of our pride, it comes out of our ambition, it comes out of some things that are good about us as human beings, and some things that aren't. And so envy is such a really interesting, multifaceted, highly complex emotion. And it can drive you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. So let's just go over the biblical principles real quick, and then let's apply it to various situations in real life, okay? Number one, Bible teaches that envy is deadly. It always kills. It kills relationships. It kills kingdoms. It kills nations. It kills companies. It kills families. It kills churches. It kills children. I mean, envy is not good. It always kills. Number two, it's the basis of the 10th commandment. Number three, it lives in the space called comparison, right? And what's interesting is comparison, in order for it to exist in your life, requires you to be a sentient human being. I know this is kind of an abstract point, but I just want you to think about this real quick, is that your capacity to compare requires transcendence. It requires desire and ambition. It requires evaluation, or the capacity to make judgments, which is a act of rationality. And so it's able to say this is better than the other thing. I mean, these are highly rational capacities. These are also spiritual in nature. And so it's basically what makes you, right? So it takes all these good things about you, but if you start to compare those things with other people, envy lives in that place. Therefore, we summed it up this way. Envy relies on all the qualities that make you a sentient or spiritual person. However, in the end, it kills everything that makes you a spiritual or sentient person. So let's ask ourselves now, let's kind of get practical here, right? And this is where we kind of start to get a little salty. And that is, how in the world do you know if you're experiencing the emotion of envy in your own life? How do you know this? Well, let's talk about it. Okay, number one, we talked about comparison, right, is where envy is really birthed, right? Now, initially, when you think about comparison, comparing yourself to something else or a standard is not a bad thing. Paul says that the law even is not evil. It just shows us, when we compare ourselves to it, how we don't measure up, and that's why we need Christ. When you compare yourself to situations, it helps you understand where you're at. When you go and look at a map and there's a little star there, whether you're at the mall, the train station, the airport, or anywhere, a national park, and you see the little star that says you are here, well, you're comparing yourself to all the places you're not. So in some ways, comparison is a very important rational function of your brain. Okay? So on the one hand, comparison is not a bad thing. However, what comparison does do is allow envy to take place. Because if you compare yourself with another person, like for instance, you say, well, this person has a better job than me, they make more money than me, they have more value, or they have more perceived benefits in their life because they have this job, then envy would say, you deserve it and they don't. So comparison in and of itself is not wrong. It's a normal function of your brain to help you grow in all these other areas of your life. But it also is the place where envy is birthed and lives. So you kind of have to understand that. This is why there's been so many wrong attempts at trying to fix envy. Everybody knows subconsciously, psychiatrists have talked about this, that envy is bad for a person, right? And so what our educational system has done, particularly in the public education system, is say, well, let's eliminate envy and jealousy of amongst the kids by getting rid of competition. And so, well, let's just get rid of competition, because competition points out that one kid is better at something than another kid. And then what happens is then comparison starts, and this creates envy and jealousy and low self-esteem and all these other different kinds of things. So the notion was, how do we help kids get along better, which is really a good virtue. But boy, the answer, get rid of competition, is completely ridiculous, because it actually made matters worse. It made comparison worse. It made jealousy worse. It made envy worse. Why? Because it didn't understand the nature of competition and what competition actually achieves. In the generalist sense, competition is about comparing yourself to a set of rules or a standard or the rules of a game, right, that other people are comparing themselves to. And you're not comparing yourself to one another. You're comparing yourself to your capacity to win the game. So what competition actually does is, on general, it brings out the best in you. It does. It brings out the best in you, not the worst in you. So competition in and of itself is about evaluating yourself. It's not about saying, well, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, to get that other person's position. What it is it's saying, I'm going to follow these rules and see if I can follow them better than anybody else in order that I achieve the prize, which makes human experience and expression and potential more achievable, because you're not competing against, I'm going to destroy this person as my enemy, but you're using the rules of the game to try to win. And so competition has a phenomenally noble role in every person's life, particularly among young males. Now, can it result in bad outcomes? Well, of course, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You don't say competition is bad because people misuse competition, or they cheat, or they do something, or you have bad coaches, or whatever may be the case, and say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the benefit, the nobility of competition, in order to fix these few problems, instead of just simply saying these people are the problem and we need to fix them. So I think that you cannot eliminate competition in order to get rid of envy, because you're saying, well, we're not going to let anybody outshine anybody else and compare them with one another. That just never works. It actually makes it worse, because envy is not about competing. Envy is about judging somebody else and then deciding they need to be brought down or they need to lose in order for you to win. And this is why envy, I think, is so deadly to you, because think about this for a moment. If you get in a habit of judging other people to the point where you say they don't deserve what they have, so I need to bring them down a notch, who is it that we tend to be most judgmental towards? Now, you might think, oh, our spouses, our bosses, our coworkers. Nope. The person that we tend to be most judgmental towards is ourselves. And so what happens is, if we get in the habit of judging other people and wanting to bring them down a notch, then we're creating an intellectual reflex that we're going to do the same thing to ourselves. So self-abasement, this is this sense of putting yourself down, feeling you have no value. That self-abasement comes from envy in some form or another. Isn't that an interesting connection? I want you to think about that. So why it's important not to be envious of other people is because that's the best way for you to walk in and embrace the value that you have in Christ. Did you catch that? So the less envious you are, then the more at peace, the stronger your confidence, your courage, and your identity and who you are in Christ becomes. And that's why envy is so deadly, is if you allow yourself to experience envy, or if you feed envy, or if you participate or let envy drive your behavior, it ends up killing your identity in Christ more than anything else. It also does other damage. It does damages to business partnerships. It does damage to teamwork and teams. It does damage to families and marriages. It does damage to companies, social organizations, churches. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. Envy is very deadly. So how do you know that you're experiencing envy? Well, when you have an incessant need to compare yourself to others so that you can come to the conclusion that they don't deserve the position or the reputation that they have. The other way that you know you're being influenced by envy is this: your propensity to participate in gossip. That's right. Now, what's the difference between having a conversation about somebody and gossip? Well, use a basic example like this. When you go from Joe lost his job at the factory, okay, you go around and say, hey, Joe, or hey, friend, I don't know if you heard, but Joe lost his job at the factory. Next question is, well, why did he lose it? Well, the best thing to say is, well, I don't know. Maybe there were layoffs or they're downsizing or whatever may be the case. So, but if you go from Joe lost his job at the factory because they're downsizing to, well, he lost his job because his boss didn't like him, what you're doing is you're making a judgment on the character or integrity of the boss. Now you are in gossip. So what is the difference between talking about facts in other people's lives and gossip? Is when you impugn intent or motive, right? And so that's very important to understand, is that, well, they did this because they're a bad person, or this happened to them because they're evil or wicked or whatever may be the case. When you start pointing out the flaws of other people in order to get a reason why something happened, then you're allowing envy to push you into the realm of gossip. So it's okay to talk about situations in other people's lives. What's not right is impugning motive, attacking integrity, or the reputation of another person. And this is what is such a huge problem in Christianity today, is that Christians, more than anybody else, tend to participate in gossip. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is they tend to impugn motive or character or reputation of the people that they're talking about. And this is all driven by envy, you see? And so that's a big thing. Another thing that really you know that you have a problem with envy, it's influencing you, is the issue of jealousy. The old green-eyed monster. Why do they call it the green-eyed monster? I don't know, but I think they call it green-eyed monster because what it does is it impacts the way you view the actions of everybody else around you, right? So you impugn negative emotions, or you're jealous, and so what you do is you say, well, this person, you're jealous of a person, and so what you do is you say, well, everything they do for a nefarious reason. And so you're jealous, and that's a difficult place to be. It turns you into a green-eyed monster. You see everything with the green eye of jealousy. It's impossible to celebrate the success of someone else. It's impossible to celebrate and join in with those who are happy about the blessings in their own life. Envy drives you to be jealous and to say, well, why isn't that happening to me? Or it's just not fair and life's not fair. Why do they get ahead and I don't get ahead? Those types of things are driven by jealousy. And that's why I think they call it the green-eyed monster, because it taints the way you see everything else going on in your life. The other thing it does, and this is what's really, really sad, is it says, one of the 10 commandments is never bear false witness against somebody else. Well, what does that mean? Well, our nation is filled with the bearing of false witness today. People are so quick to judge, driven by envy and jealousy, that they will say all kinds of horrible things about other people all the time. We've just seen this politically over and over again. And that is that this person, is a threat to democracy, or this person is evil because they want to take all your money. And what's interesting is that when you overstate the case, or you go from hey, I disagree with this person, to this person's Hitler, when you do that, what you're doing, whether you realize it or not, is you're bearing false witness. And this is one of the 10 commandments, and people are violating it all the time. And it's really sad, because it doesn't help people come together. It doesn't build unity. It's just destructive. And that's what envy does, is it kills, because it's always destructive. So based on all of these types of things, now that we have a really good pragmatic understanding of envy and what it does, let's talk about safeguards, okay? Because the safeguards are this, and that is that the reason I'm talking about envy, the reason why we're defining it and trying to get a really good working understanding of it, is because I want you to walk in the blessing and joy of not being influenced negatively by envy. When envy goes down, your joy goes up. When envy goes down, your peace goes up. When envy goes down, your purpose goes up. When envy goes down, your sense of community and connection with other people goes up. Your love for yourself, your love for people, your love for your neighbor goes up when envy goes down. And that's where I want you to live. I want to coach you in having more joy, more peace, more patience, more kindness, because when you walk that way, you'll look back on your life and go, wow, that was so much more enjoyable than I could ever imagine. I want that. What takes that away from you is envy. So here's a basic overall principle, and then we'll get into some specifics. And here is a very safe principle to live by when it comes to envy, all right? If there's anything that you're attempting to do, any direction you want to go, anything you want to be a part of, and it requires the tearing down of someone else in order for you to achieve your goal, then envy is driving your behavior. It's driving your decision-making process. Let me say it again. If anything that you're attempting to do, any place that you want to go, any goal that you want to achieve requires you to tear down someone else in order to achieve your goal, then you're being driven by envy. And in the end, even if you win in the short term, you lose, because envy will steal your peace from you. I was reading about the Great Depression just recently, and I was reading about this guy who was a trader, and he traded options and all these other different kinds of things. And he had done okay, right? And when the stock market crashed there in 1929 and started the Great Depression, a lot of people, because they were leveraged and they were so far out, they've been trading options and things, and they were shorting and doing all these different things. They couldn't come back and cover their debts. They went bankrupt in the blink of an eye in just one day because it crashed so far. A lot of people committed suicide. A lot of people just went under, and just in a crazy way. And I remember reading a story about this one man who he was a trader, and he came home, and his wife was like, I don't know what's going on. Have we lost everything? And he goes, actually, no, we have made more money today than at any time anybody in America has in history. In one night, in that one day, he made like $10-15 million. Now you think about that in today's dollars. That's hundreds of millions of dollars that he made on that one day. And so you'd think, wow, he must be so smart and da-da-da. Well, it's really interesting, because 5 years later, he was bankrupt and he'd lost it all. Now, what is the moral of that story? And the moral of that story is that his need to win, to always get more, his envy translated into greed, is what ended up ruining him. It paid off in the short term, but guess what? A normal person would have taken that money, or a rational person taken that money, diversified a bunch of it, put it into other things that were resistant to the Depression industry, that was resistant to the Great Depression. And that's what they would have done. And then they would have taken a portion of it and kept doing what they were doing, right? But he didn't do it. He bet the farm over and over again. And guess what it ended up doing? Having him go bankrupt. And the reason why is because he had to win over other people. So if anything you're attempting to do requires a tearing down of somebody else, you may win in the short run, but you always lose your soul in the long run. Never forget that lesson. Never forget that lesson. Finally, if someone has to lose for you to be successful in life, to be happier in life, to be more joyful in life, then envy is present. Because if you're a person who has a heart, how is it that your happiness is dependent upon the suffering of another person, of the loss of another person? That just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. If you want to be happy and you want to be successful, you want to be more joyful in life, then you should always approach life in a win-win orientation. And that is, other people don't have to lose in order for me to win. I want to win. I want to do really well. I want to be super successful. Then go out and do that. But don't do it in a way where other people have to lose. So, conclusion. What is the best way to ensure that you are not influenced by envy? Well, now that we know that envy can be so devastating on you as a person, the key to being free from envy is setting up the proper safeguards. And it's not difficult to do when you understand the nature of envy, what it is, where it exists, how it grows, and how you can feed it in your own life. So once you understand what it is, where it comes from, and how it grows, it's pretty easy to set up proper safeguards so that you're free from its effect on your life. So I'm just going to give you 3 that I think you should consider. Number 1 is, if envy exists in the soul, then spend time filling your soul. That's right. Spend time filling your soul. And the best way to fill your soul is to take time and be thankful to God for who he is, what he's done in this universe, your existence, and your capacity to simply know him and understand or walk with him in life. That it is him who gives your life meaning and purpose. It's in him in whom we have our being, meaning our existence. It should be in him. The more you fill your soul, then the less propensity comparison can be influenced by envy. Number 2 is comparison, right? Since it grows through comparison, set rules about how you compare. Ever thought about that? Don't say, oh, well, I'm not going to compare myself. Say, well, I'm going to evaluate myself, but not against other people. I'm going to compare myself, but not against other people. I heard it phrased this way. The person you should compare yourself with is yourself. The self from yesterday. That's right. Are you comparing yourself to where you were a year ago or a month ago or a week ago? That's the only comparing that you should be doing. The only evaluating that you should be doing is against yourself, not against other people, because there's no way to know who these other people are, what they're experiencing, and where they're at. You just don't know. So compare only yourself to yourself. And then finally, try to live with more gratitude. Be really happy about what you do have. I read this book called Things Are Getting Better All the Time. And it's amazing to think how far the society in which you live has come in the last 150 years. How people lived just 150 years ago, 2 generations ago, to how they live now. I was talking to my mom, who is turning 93 on November 11th. Shout out to you, Mom. Love you. Congratulations and happy birthday. And we were talking about how her parents, my grandma and grandpa, they dated in horse and buggy time. That's right. He had a little buggy that he would hook up to a horse, and it would seat 2 people, and that's how he courted my grandma. And what's interesting is, so he courted in a time where they didn't have cars or vehicles, right? And they just used horse and buggy. And then he saw America put a man on the moon. Isn't that amazing to think, just in that 100-year period, how quickly things have changed? Well, my friends, there is so much to have gratitude for. And the more you are, being thankful for what you do have, guess what? The less influence envy has over you. Well, this is the Salty Pastor. I hope I inspired you, coached you up today, because I really want your faith to grow. Go over to the Salty Pastor podcast on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Go to our website and donate. Become a regular donor. It takes you to the giving page. If you would like, you can send a check to Salty Pastor at 2742 East Ridgedale Place, Eagle, Idaho, 83616. Or you can simply text the word give to 833-562-3051. So as soon as we get enough people supporting us, hopefully I can quit giving that pitch. I'd love to do that, quit giving the pitch. So I just ask for your support. God bless you. And remember, always think for yourself.